Mr. President, I rise today to oppose the nomination of David Bernhardt as the next Deputy Secretary of the Interior. Mr. Bernhardt has shown that he is unwilling to fight for the long-term conservation of our public lands and the responsible use of our public resources. By his own admission, he intends to be a big business yes man for the Trump administration's extreme disregard for our environment and the human lives that are affected. President Trump promised to drain the swamp of D.C., but with each day of this administration, this Republican-controlled Senate approves yet another corporate insider to help out big business. The decision to nominate Mr. Bernhardt is no exception. He is another conflict-ridden, climate-dismissing Trump appointee who favors profits over people. Let's look at his record. Mr. Bernhardt has extensive political experience in the Department of Interior under the Bush administration. But in his tenure at the department, including the 2 years he oversaw the ethics division, the department was awash in ethical scandals and scientific misconduct. And what did he do after he left government service? He scooted off to the lucrative lobbying firm to help big oil and other extraction companies maximize their profits by expanding offshore drilling and delaying air pollution limits on coal plants, regardless of the impact that would have on our children's future. Even Mr. Bernhardt isn't proud of his own record. Prior to his nomination, his lobbying firm bio bragged about recently helping corporations fight against the Endangered Species Act, supporting corporate interests in offshore drilling and exploration for fossil fuels, and helping mining companies pursue public land for development. He openly bragged about recently representing, quote, an entity under investigation by a federal agency, and entities accused of violating the Department of Interior's regulations. He swaggered through Washington. That is, he swaggered right up until he was under consideration for the number 2 spot at Interior. And now that he's in the public spotlight, he has scrubbed all those pro-industry, pro-pollution references from his bio. Now that the public is paying attention, he's putting out a clean image of a public servant who just happens to advise big corporations from time to time. Beyond the ties that Mr. Bernhardt still has to industry, I am alarmed by his willingness to serve as the corporate rubber stamp that President Trump wants. Mr. Bernhardt is a walking conflict of interest who has taken one spin through the revolving door, and now he's coming back around again for a second pass. The deputy secretary serves at the pleasure of the president, but a deputy secretary, the number 2 at the department, is first and foremost bound to serve the American people and the mission of the department. No president is properly served by a corporate yes man, and Mr. Bernhardt's yes man mentality was on full display during his confirmation hearing. When my colleague from Minnesota, Senator Al Franken, questioned Mr. Bernhardt about climate change at his nomination hearing, he was all too willing to dismiss the urgency of climate change, and he pushed aside the responsibility of the Department of Interior to act. In defiance of accepted climate science, he stated that, quote, this president ran, he won on a particular policy perspective. That perspective's not going to change to the extent we have the discretion under the law to follow it. In other words, don't bother me with the facts. We'll just stick to whatever President Trump tells us to do. But the rest of us can't ignore the facts. Our planet is getting hotter. The last 16 years were all among the hottest 17 years on record, and our seas are rising at an alarming rate. Our coasts are threatened by furious storm surges that can sweep away homes and devastate even our largest cities. Our economically disadvantaged communities, too often situated in low-lying floodplains, are one bad storm away from destruction. Our naval bases are under attack not by enemy ships, but by rising seas. Our food supplies and forests are threatened by droughts and wildfires that are becoming so common across the country that they barely even make the evening news. The effects of man-made climate change are all around us, and things will only continue to get worse at an accelerating pace if we don't do something about it. We can act, and one important step is saying no to the corporate raiders who are seeking to exploit public lands and gamble with our children's future. President Trump thinks that leadership is handing over management of our public lands to big oil and big coal executives who are looking to stuff their pockets while the getting's good. Mr. Bernhardt, a seasoned advocate for corporate interests, seems all too eager to please this president and corporate interests, no matter the cost to the American people. If President Trump's highest-ranking agency officials are not brave enough to speak even a little truth to power about this president's climate delusions, then who will? The American people deserve leadership at the Department of the Interior, leadership that is committed to ensuring our public resources and our public lands are preserved for future generations of Americans. The American people deserve leadership that fights back when the president seeks to cut thousands of jobs at the Department of Interior or offers a budget that critically undermines the department's mission and threatens our public lands. The American people deserve leadership at the Department of Interior, leadership that works for the people, and that's not David Bernhardt. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.